Welcome to the People Teaching People podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. Today, I want to chat with you about something that I think will bring a smile to your face and maybe even a lump to your throat. We're talking about favorite teachers, those special humans who've left a mark on our lives in ways that often go far beyond the lesson plans or subject matter. Now, when I say teachers, I mean that in the widest, most beautiful sense of the word. These could be classroom teachers, absolutely. But they could also be parents, coaches, mentors, bosses, instructors, senseis, even a friend or a grandparent who taught you something that changed how you see the world. I've asked over 50 guests on this podcast to reflect on a favorite teacher or a powerful learning experience. And what always amazes me is how fast the answers come. The person might pause for a moment, but it's usually not because they can't think of anyone. It's because they're sorting through a long list of incredible humans who've taught them something meaningful. And here's the thing. It's rarely really all about what that person taught. It's almost always about how that teacher made them feel. Let me tell you about my favorite teacher of all time, Mrs. Hoglund, my grade 2 teacher at Wildwood Elementary School here in Calgary, Alberta. Now, I don't really remember a single lesson she formally taught. I think we wrote and illustrated our own version of Brown Bear, which I was probably very proud of. But what I do remember is this. I felt safe, comfortable, and welcome. I felt excited to be at school, and I didn't worry about making mistakes. That feeling stayed with me not just through elementary school, but as I became an educator myself. I truly believe that the experience I had in her classroom played a huge role in my decision to go into teaching and to work in education. And the story doesn't end there. Just recently, I reconnected with Mrs. Hoglund. We had a phone conversation and even a coffee visit. I can't even describe how special that was. She remembered so much, not just about me, but also about my brother and sister too, who are also so lucky to have her as their grade 2 teacher. She told me about the Calgary Flames versus Edmonton Oilers rivalry with my brother, where whoever's team lost had to wear the other team's hat the next day. My brother cheered for the Oilers, and Mrs. Hoglund cheered for the Flames. She remembered a story about my dad volunteering in class and laying on the story carpet, which, by the way, was absolutely not allowed. That was the rule. Everyone sits, so there's room for everyone. And there was my dad lying down while a bunch of kids yelled, "Mr. Plessick, you have to sit up." The way she recalled those stories so vividly just affirmed everything I remembered about how she cared about her students as humans. Mrs. Hoglund may be the first person who comes to mind when I think of my favorite teacher, but she is far from the only one who's made an impact. Throughout my life, I've been incredibly fortunate to learn from a long list of people. Some in classrooms, some in staff rooms, and many in everyday life. They've shown up as colleagues, mentors, friends, family members, and even students. People who challenged me, believed in me, asked good questions, or simply took the time to really see me. People who made learning feel human and who reminded me that teaching is about so much more than content. It's about connection. And when I think about what makes someone a great teacher, it's not about their title or the subject matter. It's about how they make you feel, how they show up, and how they stay with you long after the moment has passed. And that brings me to something I've seen over and over again, not just in my own story, but in the stories of so many people I've interviewed on this podcast. The best teachers don't just impact us in the moment. They influence the way we move through the world. Their voice becomes the one in our heads when we're trying something new. Their way of making us feel safe, seen, and supported becomes almost like a template for how we lead and teach, parent, or coach. Even years later, their lessons echo, often in ways they'll never know. And maybe the most beautiful part of all of this is the ripple effect. The impact of a great teacher doesn't stop with the person sitting in the classroom. It carries forward. Maybe you now show up for your students the way they showed up for you. Maybe you repeat one of their phrases to your own children. Maybe their belief in you planted a seed that shaped your whole career pathway. We don't always realize it in the moment, but when someone teaches us with heart, that moment doesn't end. It expands. It lives on in the way we show up for others. So let's take a moment together. Who is a favorite teacher in your life? This could be a classroom teacher you had growing up, or maybe a dance coach, a mentor at work, a university professor, or someone in your family who taught you something important, something you still carry with you. What made them special? What stayed with you not just in your mind, but in your heart? And when we reflect on these questions, we not only honor those who have shaped us, but we also gain insight into the kind of teacher, leader, or mentor we want to be for others. As you think about that person, you might ask yourself, what was it they did? Or how did they show up that made such a difference? So let's pause and ask a simple question. What actually makes a teacher unforgettable? It's rarely the perfect rubric or the PowerPoint slides with these fancy animations. It's things like showing up consistently, creating a space where you're allowed to be yourself, asking questions and truly listening, believing in you even before you believe in yourself, and bringing a little humor, humility, or humanity into the moment. Now, these things may seem small on the surface, but they leave that lasting impression. They help us feel valued, capable, and seen. And often it's those little things, the encouraging nod, the patient pause, the inside joke. Those are things that we carry with us long after the lesson is over. So let's go a little deeper here. If we think back to those favorite teachers, it's often not the grand gestures that stick with us. It's the small moments, the way they greeted us at the door, the nickname they gave us, the time they let us redo an assignment, not because they had to, but because they believed we could do better. It's the way they paused to really listen when we had something to say. These moments might have seemed ordinary to them, but they became extraordinary to us. They're the tiny human moments that told us, you matter, you belong, I see you. And here's the beautiful part. These moments don't take a lesson plan. They're often spontaneous, grounded in presence, and rooted in care. They happen in the in-between. Walking down the hall, laughing after a technology mishap, remembering a birthday, or simply noticing when something seems off and asking, hey, are you okay? These aren't the kinds of things that show up on a report card or in formal feedback, but they stay with us. And sometimes they're what we come back to years later, long after we've forgotten the content. So, if you're someone who's guiding others as a teacher, parent, coach, facilitator, colleague, remember this. You don't have to do something big to make a big impact. Sometimes the smallest interactions are the ones that leave the longest imprint. And when you look back at the people who shaped you, chances are it was their small moments, not their perfection, that made them unforgettable. So what's at the heart of a great teacher? It's not just what they know, it's who they are when they teach. It's how they show up, how they hold space for others, and how they bring their full humanity into the learning experience. Great teachers lead with empathy. They sense when someone's having an off day. They notice when a student lights up with understanding or shuts down from frustration. They offer encouragement that feels real, and they model the very values they hope to pass on. They're curious, not just about the content, but about the people in the room. They don't pretend to have all the answers. Instead, they create space for questions, ideas, mistakes, and growth. They don't just teach, they learn alongside us. And they do it all often with a kind of quiet courage, the courage to try something new, to keep showing up, even when the day is hard. To believe in someone long before that person believes in themselves. When I think about the heart of great teachers, I think about the way they make us feel known, not just as learners, but as people. That's what stays with us. That's what we carry forward. And I've heard this heart-centered presence come through time and time again in the stories shared by my podcast guests. Let me tell you about a few of them. Jill Drader, who is the CEO and life and business transformation strategist with OwlSeek, shared that her favorite teacher was Carolyn Baxter, her high school psychology teacher and also a psychic medium. Carolyn introduced Jill to metaphysics, opening the door to the kind of deep self-reflection that shaped not only Jill's worldview, but also her career. Jill now lives in the same townhouse complex where Carolyn once lived. Before moving in, she asked for a sign, and 2 blue jays appeared on the fence in the middle of winter. Carolyn's voice, presence, and way of seeing Jill still live on in Jill's writing, her coaching, and her life. For Nikki Stasiak, CEO and digital media designer with Fetching Finn, her favorite teacher was her karate sensei. His teaching style was firm, intense, and deeply rooted in tradition, and Nikki loved it. He set high expectations and pushed her to her limits, helping her build the resilience and strength she now brings into her work as an entrepreneur. His lessons were never just about karate. They were about grit, determination, and not giving up when things get hard. For Suzanne Fox, president and founder of Suzanne Fox Communications, it was her mom, a teacher herself who first modeled curiosity and a love of learning. But professionally, her most formative mentor was Carl Worth, who once told her out of the blue, "You're anchoring the news tonight." And when she said she didn't know how, he helped her prepare and then left the building. He trusted her to do it. That trust gave Suzanne the kind of confidence she still carries today. So these stories, Jill's and Nikki's and Suzanne's, are so different on the surface, but they all point to something we've been circling around throughout this episode. Meaningful teaching moments stay with us, and they become part of how we think, how we show up, and how we grow. And that's why I want to leave you with a small challenge. If you're able, I'd love to invite you to reach out to your favorite teacher, that person who stayed with you, and let them know the impact they have had. And when you do, go beyond the simple thank you. Tell them what you remember, what stuck with you, how they helped shape the person you've become. And here's something else. As you move through your own learning journey, when someone new makes an impact, whether it's an inspiring speaker, a mentor at work, a coach, or even a colleague who shifts your perspective, take a moment to let them know too. Don't wait. These moments matter, and people often don't realize the difference they've made until someone says it out loud. And if you're someone who's currently teaching, leading, mentoring, or supporting others, know this. You might not remember the exact moment someone learned something from you, but they will remember how you showed up. they'll remember how you made them feel. And that feeling, that connection is often what turns a moment into a lasting memory. We so often think about learning in terms of content, what we know, what we pass on. But the most powerful kind of teaching is the kind that touches who we are. So here's something to think about as you go into your day. How do you want others to feel when they're learning with you? What kind of experience do you want to create? One that's safe, exciting, and human? Whose lessons are still showing up in your life? Maybe even in the way you show up for others. Those teachers are still with us. And if you're listening to this podcast, chances are you are someone else's favorite teacher, even if they haven't told you yet. Thanks so much for spending this time with me. If today's episode made you think of someone special, I hope you'll take a moment to tell them. And if you're reflecting on how you want to teach or lead more meaningfully, know that you are in good company here. Thank you for joining me today on the People Teaching People podcast. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to send me an email or reach out on social media. And if you think someone else could benefit from this episode, please share it with them. Thank you for listening. Let's keep learning and appreciating the people who've taught us together.